Hey there guys, welcome back to my channel, my daily walk and my new haircut. Feel free to leave comments below about it if you think it's bad. Today I'm going to be, on request, making a video explaining how you can create your very own star trail. I'll be telling you how you can make it into just an individual photo or make it into a short video and everything that you need to know about it. So of course first you're going to need some equipment, some hardware and some software. Obviously you'll need a camera and a tripod. You also might need a timer to attach to your camera to automatically take photos for you. And you're going to need software to layer your photos later on, as well as a computer to run that. What camera, you ask? Well really, you can do it on any camera if you're patient enough, but I'll be talking about how I do it on my DSLR today. The best time to shoot a star trail where you've only got stars in it is when the moon is not in the picture. As you can probably imagine, the moon is very bright and the stars are nowhere near as bright as it is, and it will skew your image. I usually use timeanddate.com to find out what the moon cycle is and plan my next trip. The best time to shoot a star trail is when it's least illuminated, so that you can control the exposure as much as you want. When you actually go out into the field and start shooting stars, you'll notice that it's really easy to get a photo of stars with them moving because they move really quickly. Even with just a 1 minute exposure, you can see the star trail. Depending on which part of the sky you shoot, it will take shorter or longer to see this spinning star motion. Now if your sole purpose is to create a video out of it, then, well, let me tell you, you're going to be there for a very long time. Although it is possible, usually on a dark night, with a pretty decent camera, you need to have at least a 45-second exposure to create a photo that is illuminated correctly with less grain. Assuming that your project is 30 frames per second, and that you shoot your photos for 45 seconds each with no gap, it will take you 11.25 hours to create a 30-second animation. You could shoot it quicker with a higher ISO of course, but then you're sacrificing your smoothness. But then again, for video, do you really even notice that? It seems a lot easier to do it with photos than it does with video, mainly because it doesn't really take as long, or it doesn't need to. You can shoot it entirely in one frame, or you can shoot it with only as little as 100 frames. I can't really tell you how long it will take because that's entirely up to you and your glass, of course. I'm sorry that I didn't make mention to this before, but a star trail is much like a time-lapse. Unless you've got a specific purpose in mind, generally you want to be using your widest angle lens with your lowest aperture. Aperture is also referred to as the f-stop. A word of caution, it can be very hard to focus exactly in the right spot. You'll look through the eyepiece and focus it to your eye, and think, yeah, that sounds great, that looks good, take a 30-second aperture, and then realize that it's actually slightly out of focus. You'll do this multiple times until you give up, really. Unless you focus it through live view. It's very easy to see when something is in and out of focus, especially when you've zoomed in 10 times on a very bright star. Once you've focused correctly and started exposing photos, sit back, don your jumper, sit on your chair and eat some chips. What lenses should I use? I'm glad you asked. For crop sensors, aka APS-C sensors, I recommend Sigma's 18 to 35mm f1.8 constant aperture lens. For full frame cameras, I once again recommend a Sigma 28mm f1.8. If you are planning to use Sigma's 18 to 35mm lens on a full frame camera, it is possible, although sometimes not recommended. It creates great images when zoomed into 35mm, but at 18mm the coverage is somewhat circular. If you want to use this lens on one of Nikon's full frame cameras, be warned that it will essentially crop your sensor down to be just like an APS-C size sensor, kind of defeating the purpose. The price, you ask? Well, Sigma's 18 to 35mm is $800 and the 28mm is $450. But if budget is a problem for you and focal length is not, I would wholeheartedly recommend picking up a 50mm 1.8 immediately. You can get them for around $150 new or probably even cheaper on eBay. Okay, so here is where I'm going to show you how you can get all of your star trail images and make them into a singular photo. First we have to open them up, select all of them, click on this button here. I use Lighten Screen Blend without gaps because you can see the difference. Press OK. In this window here, you'll see the preview, and it tells you how many photos it's already layered. So far it's already layered 3 photos, and you can see it's slightly starting to trail, and the trails will get longer as more photos are added. As you can see, it's complete now. All 100 photos have been layered together and it looks awesome. Now all you have to do is save it. Now it has some limited options here: bitmap, JPEG or TIFF. And as far as I know, TIFF is the only lossless format available, so that's what I saved mine into. Of course, you can always come back later in Photoshop and convert your TIFFs to PNG or PSDs if you like, but this seems fine. Okay, so here's where I'm going to show you how you can create your Star Trail pictures into a video using Adobe Premiere Pro version CS 5.5. So here I've got my project name, that's where I've got my location. You can set those up. The rest of these should already be here, and if they're not, they don't make that much of a difference anyway, I believe. Okay. Now this is where you choose your project settings, and usually I use a different one to this one here, but because of the video that I'm creating right now, this is the settings that I'm using. It's a 16:9 format, 1920 by 1080, 29.97 frames per second, and everything else that you could ever want to know, or whatever. Put in a name, same as the project if you like, press OK. Here's the project. Now we've got to go and import all our images and wait for that to work, which sometimes takes a while. Sweet, they're all in there. Now what I do is I import them all to the stage, select them all, go scale to frame size, then I go speed duration, put it to 1 frame. Now that I've got them all in here as 1 frame, I right click on them and then go nest. Now if I had my photos in the other way, I would also have to, at this point, go over here and scale it up a bit so that it fits into 16:9, because photos, now when I scrub the cursor here, you can see the stars moving because I've got each photo in there as 1 frame, and of course 30 frames per second. You can also add in music at this point, but I won't be. What you do next after that is export it. The shortcut is Control M. Alright, here's our output. This is where you type in what frame size you use and every other setting you can think of. Frame rates down here, make sure that you've got it the same as your project, because you can have a 30 frames per second project and then export it out at 50 frames per second. It'll figure it out, but it's not really best to do that. Make sure you've got your pixel aspect ratio to 16:9, and come down the bottom here. You can use a few different encoders here. If you've got the time, then VBR is almost your go-to option for every single video you can ever export. Down here we're going to put in our bit rate. 2.5 megabytes per second as a target sounds pretty good. Premiere thinks it's going to be a 1 megabyte video, which sounds pretty nice. Click on export.